Tales of children living and surviving in the wild have fascinated us for centuries. From Romulus and Remus, the mythical twins raised by a she-wolf, to the legendary Tarzan of the Apes. Each of these wilderness children has reportedly learned the ways of the jungle, the language of their adopted family, and survived for years away from all human contact. But are these stories fact or fiction? Could a child really survive alone in the forest? Would animals care for rather than eat a human baby? And if left in the wilderness, can a child forget its human origins and transform into a wild beast? Experts in the field of psychology and animal behavior examine the world's most compelling cases, from the boy in Uganda who lived with monkeys, to the girl in the Ukraine raised among dogs, and the Australian woman said to run with kangaroos. Skeptics and believers alike will attempt to uncover the truth behind feral children. If a baby were left alone in the woods, how would it manage to survive? We humans come into the world completely helpless. We know little more than how to breathe and how to cry. Animals, on the other hand, stagger to their feet within minutes of birth and begin to take on the world. They instinctively know how to get nourishment from their mothers. Life is a struggle, and only the fittest survive. Human and animal offspring do have some things in common, but a human child is ill-equipped to face the world on its own. So if a child is removed from its parents and the comforts of home, could it survive? And is it possible that in the absence of its own mother, a nurturing monkey would step in? We've all heard this sort of story before. Tales of so-called feral children who live in the wild, often as part of a family of animals. But are these stories real?
Would I rule it out? No. It may be possible, it may have been possible, it may have happened.
My gut instinct is to say some are probably real and some are not.
Although rare, tales of wild children have appeared all over the world. Oksana Malaya, known as the Ukrainian dog girl, lived for years with a pack of dogs. In South Africa, a boy named Lucas allegedly spent his childhood in the care of a troop of baboons. Amala and Kamala were a pair of Indian girls who local police found sleeping in a wolf den. These stories are intriguing and oddly compelling. But what's the truth behind feral children?
The word feral has many different meanings, but here we're using it in the sense of children who either reared themselves without human companionship, or more likely were reared by some form of animal.
Dr. Douglas Candland has studied the phenomenon of feral children and their alleged interactions with wild animals. He's examined hundreds of reported cases and says that most rely on eyewitness accounts and have certain elements in common.
They all said the child had no recognizable speech. The child did not like to eat cooked food. The child walked on all fours. So, quite properly, people were saying, this is a wild child.
But just how reliable are these accounts? One of the most compelling cases in modern history comes from Kampala in Uganda. Kampala is home to over 1 million people who, like most city dwellers, face a sometimes difficult commute to work. But one wrong turn on these dusty roads can lead to some of the world's thickest jungle. 2 hours south of Kampala, on the edge of Africa's untamed forests, lies Bombo Village. It was here, in 1991, that a remarkable story emerged. A woman walking through the African brush one day was startled by a group of vervet monkeys chattering in the trees. The monkeys were a common sight around the outskirts of the village, often stealing food and bothering the locals. But as the woman watched them, she caught a glimpse of something that terrified her. A dark form crouching in the branches. The creature that caused her to run was a human boy. Later, when the woman realized what she'd seen, she went back into the jungle and brought the child home. News of the strange boy quickly spread. The local villagers felt sorry for him, but they weren't quite sure what they were seeing.
Everybody came to see the new boy, who had hair all over, and he had no toe. The toe was bitten by monkeys.
Children from the village recalled that when the boy first arrived, he was as wild as an animal.
He could scratch you like you are not a human being. Do you know how a cat does? He could scratch you like a cat.
They decided that the boy must have been in the forest for a while. Apparently, he hated to be kept indoors, wouldn't eat cooked food, and didn't like to wear clothes. And he wouldn't or couldn't talk. But the boy did seem to be able to communicate with the vervets and even moved like a monkey.
He was moving like this, just like a monkey.
Before long, locals were calling him a real-life Tarzan, the fictional boy who grew up in the jungle.
Whoa! Whoa! I think we are wondering, what kind of guy is this? It was really amazing to see such a guy making noise of an animal.
So who was this mysterious wild child? Local authorities eventually identified him as John Sabunya, a 4-year-old that had gone missing from a nearby village a year earlier. To this day, the villagers believe it was the monkeys that helped this defenseless child to survive alone in the wild. It's a romantic notion, but is this really what happened? Perhaps the only way to find out for sure is to ask John Sabunya himself what he remembers. When it comes to stories of feral children, it's often hard to separate fact from fiction. Most of the cases occur in remote areas, where the details are poorly documented. And then there's the input of the media. Stories of children raised by animals make for sensational headlines, and the details often get lost in copy that's written to satisfy an audience thrilled by news of the weird. Many such stories eventually turn out to be fabrication. A case in point is this tale of a young woman from Eucla, a tiny outpost on the coast of Western Australia. Eucla isn't the kind of place you'd expect to make headlines, but in the 1970s, a strange story began to make the rounds. A couple of hunters claimed they'd spotted a half-naked young woman running with a pack of kangaroos.
She was blonde, not too tall, medium size, but nice developed.
The rumor quickly spread, and curious sightseers began to flock to Eucla in search of the kangaroo girl. A busload of tourists did get a glimpse of her, and eventually a photographer caught her on film. The locals nicknamed her the Nullarbor Nymph, and the media had a field day. But the story turned out to be a hoax. The brainchild of 4 drinking buddies who thought the tiny town of Eucla and its population of 50 could use a little publicity.
We had a chance to introduce our secluded place to the whole world.
They dressed a local girl in kangaroo skins. Then, as the tour buses came into town, the boys would cue the kangaroo girl.